Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and we are working our way through Season 23, covering Heep's album, Outsider, released in June 2014. Our song today is song number 3 on the album called The Law. Let's just jump right into it. Here it is by Uriah Heep. Wow. That is a killer opening for sure. I mean, the guitars are nice and simple, but it's a really cool riff, you know, and then you've got the drums coming in and every other snare hits off the beat. So it just gives you this kind of surreal off time feel, even though the bass drums are on time, but every other snare is not. Then, as if that wasn't a cool enough thing, you've got these really nice high register notes being played by Davey Rimmer on bass. Not a sound that you hear on bass a lot outside of like super progressive music or maybe some jazz fusion, but really, really different sound for that combination of instruments. I really like it. Yeah, this is a really nice addition of the Hammond as the bass starts to settle into working with Russell on the rhythm section, and really nice, powerful chords from Phil on the Hammond. Wow, just a great sound overall, really powerful. Nothing is, piercing my ear. Nothing is too controlling over any of the other instruments. It's a really nice blend. Yeah, this really feels inspirational to me. When I interviewed Bernie, we talked about that and about how some of the lyrics really have been about inspiration and, hope and that sort of thing. And this really feels along par with that. I love the idea of what we're talking about here, just saying, we want to make things better, but it's going to have to get a little dirty first. And that is the truth. A lot of times that does have to be the case, but in the end, it's almost always worth it. But his voice on this, he's a little grittier on this album, which I like. And, it adds a nice grit to the organ as well. And the organ is a little bit just slightly dominant over everything. I could use just maybe like one down on the volume on that, just to hear everything cut through a little bit better. But I can still hear what Mick is doing, which is nice. And in the last song, I really didn't get that as much. But I think this is a little bit better of a balance. And Bernie just sounds killer.
The law into your own hand. You gotta make the law into your own plan. You gotta take the law into your own hand. You gotta make the law into your own plan.
Normally, I probably wouldn't like a first chorus being that long if the lyrics are just going to repeat. In this case, though, I think it actually works because they're throwing some different things in there. There was that nice ping pong delay that we heard on the vocals. I heard on one of the passes, there was like a deeper voice that came in. They put things in there to make it interesting. And so it wasn't just repeating the same lines over and over again without there being anything different. So that was actually pretty cool. But normally, I would say that would be something that wouldn't make me happy unless you did something exactly like that, unless you put some other spices in there. If that isn't Uriah Heep being Uriah Heep, I don't know what is. Those were some stunning vocals. Really like the way that they grew in that part. Again, it would be normally kind of repetitive unless you do something to change things up, make it a little more interesting to listen to instead of just repeat. So far, we've had two back-to-back instances of that in the song. And it's a really cool part. Love the double bass here. It really thickens things up and drives the song a little bit harder. Not something we've been used to hearing because Lee Kerslake was a single bass drummer. So not really a lot of that going on over those years. And Russell's really come and put his stamp on the band for sure. I mean, the sound changed dramatically. The writing felt more aggressive. The drums obviously are much bigger in the mix now. And I love his cymbals. I'm a big fan of Pisces cymbals myself. And I love the way that they sound. So they're really nice on the song as well.
You gotta make a sacrifice when you hear the sirens calling. You can take it anyway, try to see it as a warning. Part the sea with floods of shame, stepping stones on sinking sand. Everything is there for you, turn it into wonderland. You gotta take.
While it does happen, I would say that a drummer switching to the ride in the middle of the verse is not the most common thing. A lot of times they'll stick with the hats until it gets to a chorus, and that's when they'll change, or they'll change it maybe during the solo section or the final verse. So this was a bit of a surprise to me that he went for that, but I really like the level of it. A lot of times it's kind of dangerous, just like riding on the crash cymbal. Sometimes it cuts through a little bit too much. Sometimes it buries other sounds, but they've actually got this at a really good volume here where you can still hear everything just as clear, but you're not having to hear that swish of the hi-hat all the time. Now we've got a little bit of a bell, and it's kind of dead. Like, it doesn't really ring out a whole lot, which I think helps too. But man, sometimes those can just really cut through, especially under vocals when you don't want them to. But they've really got this dialed in perfectly.
The law into your own hands. You gotta make the law into your own plans.
Okay, a couple quick things right here. Notice again that delay on Bernie's vocal that we hear on two parts there. I really like the way that they filtered that too, because it's not just him being repeated. There's actually a filter on it that changes the sound. And I really like the way that they did that. And then also we heard that deeper voice come in again on the second pass there. And again, just adds a little bit of a different dynamic and something interesting to hear instead of just that same repeat. Wow, I don't know what I like better, whether it was Mick's solo or the rhythm keeping everything together behind him. You know what? Why have to choose what you like over something else? How about we just like the whole thing? How about that? I really do, though. I think it's great. That rhythm section is fantastic, really tight. I like what they're playing there. It's very dynamic. I like the choppiness of it. That'd be great for a mosh pit. And then what Mick's playing over the top is he's just on fire on this song, very passionate solo. And it's one of his faster ones, but I still feel like this is within the context of the song. He's playing a lot of notes, he's playing fast, but I really feel like it still is in the context of the song. He hasn't lost me anywhere along the line. And I've talked about that before, where some guitarists, especially if they play fast, will sometimes like get off track of the song. Like they just go off into their little world and they know the tempo that they're playing, but they kind of forget that there's something behind them. And things kind of get out of context. And I'm like, I don't even know what this has to do with the song. But with this solo, this is played very quickly, lots of stuff going on, and yet it doesn't take me out of the song at all. And that to me is the sign of a great solo. So moving on.
The law into your own hands. You gotta make the law into your own hands. You gotta take the law into your own hands. You gotta make the law into your own plans.
This section is a really nice surprise. I really thought we were just going to get another minute of the chorus, but this is a really nice change. I love how it just all of a sudden dropped down, very gentle organ playing, very gentle drums too. I mean, we're hearing mostly ride here, and this is a spot where the ride is going to cut through because there's not that much going on around it. But what's interesting is I'd said earlier that the bell of the ride was very dead, and it was because the rest of like the reverb washed into the rest of the song. And the as the bell decayed, it goes into the song. So it really sounds dry, but here you can hear it's not. That ride cymbal is very vibrant and it sounds really good. And then I love just those really gentle bass drums that come creeping in. You don't get a chance to hear Russell playing this lightly very often, so it's a real treat. And I have to wonder how difficult it might have been to be consistent on how hard you hit when the hits are that gentle. When you're used to being like a really good heavy hitter and really projecting sound as a drummer, sometimes these can be really challenging parts. I don't know if they were for Russell or not, but I can say for a lot of drummers, this would be a harder part to play. Now, that is not the engineer turning the drums down. I mean, there might have been a little bit of that, but it's definitely a different punchiness to the bass drum that you could hear during the rest of the song than what we're hearing here. These are, really quick hits, not a lot of power put behind them, but a very consistent double bass playing, which is really cool. If you've ever played double bass, you'd really understand how tough that would be to play. If you're normally a heavy hitter, to play that gently, especially with your feet, is a real challenge. And to be that consistent, really fantastic. But you can hear as it builds a little bit of a dynamic change in the sound of the drum. As he's hitting it harder, you're getting a little more slap back, you're getting a little more punch. And so when it's really quiet and you're hearing those bass drums, they're pretty soft. But as the build grows, you can hear the dynamic change and you can hear a little bit more punch. You can hear a little bit more slap on that kick. So it's really interesting to hear him play this as a drummer, total respect. Well, that's a great concert ending right there. Leading up to that, though, right before the stops, Davey's kicking in with some really cool stuff on bass, and then it goes into those stops. Then we hear the bass drum kick in again, and the bass drum starts doubling up as the song starts to slow down, which is really an interesting dynamic. And then obviously it ends. Really cool. I did not expect that. Great song, I have to say. It could border on the line of a little bit repetitive, but I think the parts individually themselves are cool enough. And like I said earlier, the way that they've added some things in there to make it not monotonous, I think was really cool. It's a good song. Definitely fits well on the album. Some really nice twists, some great drumming and bass playing on this one, especially. Killer solo from Mick, great vocals, great backing organ. Really love the way that the organ just kind of accented during the song quite a bit. Really good, really good. Very unexpected song, but again, we've had a change in the band. And as we saw when Russell came in, the dynamics of the band changed, the sound of the band changed. I wouldn't expect any different when Davey joined. But really good song, really good. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. If you didn't, maybe if you listen again, you'll enjoy it as much as I did. I don't know, but I did. So thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you Thursday for another episode of the show. We will be covering the song, the title track. Well, kind of the title track, because the album itself is called Outsider and the song is called The Outsider. So it's not exact, but it's as close as you're going to get. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!